Welcome back. This is Daybreak. Lovely to have you here on the broadcast, and thank you for staying with us. We'll sample your feedback in the course of this broadcast this morning here on Daybreak, and the hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code, as ever, is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. On my immediate right is Buka Omole. He is the National Vice Chairperson of the Communist Party of Kenya. Good morning, Buka. Lovely having you here. On the front line during the process yesterday?
Of course, yes. It's important to say that what the young people are actually demonstrating in the street calls for even older generation to join them. And the majority of the Kenyan people now are going in the street even with their children. But to open this debate...
Okay, we'll continue with the debate. Josephine Wanjiru is youth and gender advocate. Good morning, Josephine.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Lovely having you here. And also Wangai Wange, the leadership and governance consultant, who informed me that they had never had enough sleep to show up for this show on the broadcast. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Much appreciated. Lovely having you here on the broadcast. Yes, Buka, you are proceeding with the point then. And how effective would this be? Because on many fronts, a lot has been deployed in terms of seeking proper governance, good leadership, which largely comes from a democratic process. But also what has transpired, yes, it's an exercise of a constitutional right. But what's the end game? What will it yield in the end?
First of all, it's important to note that the people fighting in the street are not fighting to support some ideas in their head. These people have been confronted. It's like they are locked in a room of starvation. They are fighting a fight of life and death. They are fighting to save their dignity. They are fighting to protect themselves from dying. So they are not just saying that we want to go to the street. Nobody wants to go to the street. People want to live a happy life in Kenya. But now some people have forced you. It's like you are locked into a room. There's no food, there's no oxygen. You have to break it and move forward. But three most important points. First of all, we have to pass really our heartfelt condolences to Rex Masai, who was murdered by the Kenya police yesterday. This is important because the protest yesterday were highly a peaceful protest. But after 6 o'clock, the government deployed thugs in the street that shot at the youths, murdered and injured a few people to create and manufacture fear of consent. But what the government must know, that even if they want to manufacture fear of consent, people are already dying at home. So they will prefer to die in the street fighting than to expect them to stay at home. The second thing is the legality of the process. President William Samoei Ruto has violated every other right to dominate us as our president, every person that voted him. What the young people are saying, that you lied to us. And now it is not the time to put more lies. We just want you to solve the crisis in this country through practical issues. And we are not saying that you go, for example, and do some window dressing in terms of trying to bring out that I want to say that if the housing levy was illegal the other time, I want to remove it. Or I want to say that I want to cut the 16 budget cuts. What people are asking for is not a theoretical solution. They want president to roll out a process that will absorb the majority of the Kenyan people into employment, and that is industrialization. There is no plan in the budget to roll out a deliberate industrialization process to absorb the young people that are unemployed. In fact, these demonstrations have even augmented. They are not just talking about this finance bill. Now we are saying Ruto must go because he has crossed the red line. We are going to demand that the IMF draft bill be pushed back because it is not a product of the people. So what the Kenyan people are saying, that do not debate a product that is being imposed upon the Kenyan people, but we want to start a process that will have a consent of budget for the majority of the people that can actually be determined, but not to reclaim our sovereignty to some foreign powers.
Okay, and finally, you make the final point, and because I want also us to be practical about the essence of what this will generate in the end. And when you say he must go, there are only two ways. And we gave unto ourselves a very liberal, one of the most admired, eloquent, and transparent constitution, where we have predictable electoral timetable, where we go to the elections after every 5 years. The problem is that you young Kenyans don't vote or do not register as voters. When you say he must go, you have to either petition Parliament or an impeachment process is starts at the floor of the National Assembly, because it has that powers given to it by the Constitution. How then can you explore these two options besides saying verbally that he must go, to be practical, as you have mentioned in your first submission?
First of all, what puts President Ruto into State House is that he affirms to the Kenyan people that he will observe fidelity to the Kenyan Constitution. If the President Ruto violates the Constitution, he has no mandate, he has no jurisdiction to be our president. And the Article 1 of the Constitution absolutely mentions that all power is in the people of Kenya. They can exercise it directly through themselves or indirectly through the leaders that they have elected to represent them. That means the only way for the young people in the street, if the President Ruto violates the Constitution, whoever calls the law must live by that law. There is nowhere in the Constitution that is indicated that IMF and World Bank can impose a draft on us for discussion. In fact, the Constitution narrates itself and pronounces itself that all discussions and public participation must be from below. And it actually resonates with the President's message when he was campaigning, the bottom-up approach.
Okay.
Now, this practicality we are talking about, that the President has a choice. He can choose to stick by the Constitution and extend his term, or be overthrown by the anger of the people, because all power belongs to the people of Kenya, without restricting ourselves to a boat crowd in Parliament that to petition the same president. 205 legislators.
Thank you. We'll talk more about that. And the change that we all desire comes at the ballot, to be clear, because we have a very laid out, beautiful procedure of the electoral process where Kenyans will go to the ballot, and we know when they will go to the ballot, and we have institutions that oversee that process. Josephine, coming to you, what profound effect would this protest by Gen Zs have on Kenya's governance landscape? And do you think it can do a course correction of the very evident missteps by those in leadership positions? And at most times, where all this revolves, and which is Parliament, where parliamentarians have largely failed the Kenyan people in advocating for public interest issues.
First of all, thank you for having me. And second of all, I'd like to state, as a matter of factly, for myself, I am a Gen Z. I am part of the Gen Z movement. But the trajectory the Gen Z movement has taken up to now, as of yesterday, is one that I do not support. Now, first, to go to your questions as I expound on my statement. So you're asking if what is happening, the protests, will have an impact on our legislature and our lawmaking process. That has answered itself. Whatever happened on Tuesday in the protests, which were largely peaceful, have already impacted even the finance bill itself. The Finance and Planning Committee went in Nakuru over the weekend and made parliamentary changes to the bill and came out with it on Tuesday, because Monday was a public holiday, came out with it on Tuesday and told us that we have listened to you in accordance with Article 118 and Article 196 of the Constitution, which mandates public participation. What we are doing right now is constitutionally correct. This is what the Constitution of 2010 was envisioning for the country when they made people be able to participate, and not just locally. Public participation is international, which means that even governance experts in Germany, US, are able to participate once the budget policy statement and other bills, not just the financial bill, are rolled out. The effect of this right now, that we have, the kind of participation it is, we have already seen the good effects that happened, which is up for debate. I know my people, my gentleman over here on my right and left, will have a say on whether the changes to the bill were lawful or were good or whatever. In my opinion, the changes to the bill were adequate, and they bore good fruits. Right now, what the Gen Zs are doing is saying reject wholly. Let's go to the bill-making process. These things come from the National Treasury before they even go to the Parliament. National Treasury has experts, people who have done finance for the longest time, all the way in budget, even budget appropriation and budget formulation. Started in November, budget policy statement. In February, that's when it was released. And from February, this has been amended and debated up to now. For us to say, to reject the whole bill now, when the financial year starts 1st of July, we have 10 days to come up with something, have it approved, have it amended, and then have it implemented by 1st of July. That is a far stretch. What we can have right now is we have the third reading that has amendments to the bill. Let us talk to our MPs. You have told us what you have changed. Can you ask us what you want you to change? We do not want you to change the eco levy on sanitary towels. Okay. Instead, why don't you impact an eco levy on other plastics that are being manufactured and whatnot? Now, what we need to do is sit down reasonably and tell them what we want. Let me give you a short scenario for context, because you're talking to the young people, and some of these terms may be jargon. When I was in high school, that's when Dr. Matiang'i came into the parliament as the cabinet secretary for education. I was in Form 3. That was in 2016. When he came in, he said, you know what? My high school, we're paying a whopping 100,000 per year for a national school that has so many people from all diverse backgrounds come to the school. That was unfair. Dr. Matiang'i said, you know what? I'm cutting all school fees across all high schools to 53,000 per year, which was commendable. Now, our headmistress came to us. I'd applaud her so many times. She's called Mrs. Kainga, and I give you a shout out. She decided, you know what, 99,000, 50,000 is a lot, and I understand the reason. But let me go to my students. She called us all to the school hall and told us, we're having a budget cut. And you know what that means? It means that now you do not enjoy life as usual. Can you tell me what you want to cut according to you're living here and whatnot? I will tell you what I propose, and you tell me. And we had just a 1-hour discussion. Everything was okay. We said we used to take coffee in the morning. We said you can take porridge. It's easier. We used to have smokies and eggs every Sunday. We told them we can have a smoky every other Sunday. We used to have milk tea at 4 p.m. We told them you don't need the milk tea at 4 p.m. You can cut that. You can imagine those recurrent expenditures, what impact it had, and the peace it had between the people. That's what
you were consulted.
You were consulted. And that's what we need to do. And it is actually in the Constitution to consult the public. And we are exercising our right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Wangede, are the changes announced by the Finance and National Planning Committee Chairperson, Kuria Kimani, enough to satisfy the reasons as to why the demonstrators are on the streets, and why the sudden change in the position of the Gen Zs who are demonstrating from not the amendments that they have heard, but now calling for a total rejection?
Thank you, Ayub. First, I would like to send my commiserations as well to the gentleman that we lost yesterday in the protests. That was quite unfortunate, unnecessary, uncalled for. Violence should never, at any one point, be meted on demonstrators who are demonstrating peaceably. Article 37 of the Constitution is very clear about demonstrations. So we can never have a negotiation around violence on protesters. To your question, it's good progress, because finance bill previously, before the amendment, was quite punitive. And what we think, for the record again, I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial. And what this generation is asking for is, can we be conscious about the conversation around frugality and accountability around the leadership that we have that goes beyond the finance bill? So the conversation with the generation right now, I'm calling it the woke generation, not Gen Z, as many people are doing, because it spans from anyone who is below 40 years. And what we are asking is, can we have a conversation around accountability beyond the finance bill? What I consider the finance bill as a silver lining is, it has sparked the conversation. And now the generation is asking for a conversation that is beyond the finance bill to leadership. So when you hear my colleague talk about the demand that the president must go, they are saying, we are not satisfied with how you are governing the nation. Therefore, we are asking that you reconsider the conversation around leadership, not just the finance bill. So it's good enough that it has started the conversation around what can be cut and what can be amended, what can be changed. But there's far-reaching and more important conversations beyond the finance bill.
So this is just the tip of the iceberg?
Absolutely. I think this was just a trigger to the conversation. And from what I am seeing and what I consider, we are dealing with a leadership crisis now from the young people's point of view, as opposed to just issues around the finance bill.
Okay, when we get back from the break, Josephine, Wangai and Buka will expound more on that and the accountability questions regarding the country's landscape architecture, and given that they are also institutions mandated, and therefore the questions that linger as to why they have been unable to a large extent in terms of, if you look at the war on corruption, if you look at bringing to book people who have misused their authority or offices that they hold which are constitutional, and why many of them still are enjoying freedom, yet they are supposed to be answering for some very glaring questions that largely border on accountability, as Wangai had mentioned. This is Daybreak, and the hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We are back with more after the break on the broadcast. Stay tuned.